The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 300 meters of polished obsidian floors and towering crystalline pillars that hummed with ancient energy. And Ambassador Daniel Hartley had never felt smaller in his entire life as he stood at the human delegation podium facing 12 alien species who looked at him the way a cat looks at a wounded bird. He kept his hand steady on the podium, though inside his heart hammered against his ribs like a desperate prisoner trying to escape. And he reminded himself that billions of human lives depended on what happened in this room today. The Vorten delegation sat at the center of the curved council table, their insectoid bodies covered in chitinous armor that gleamed under the artificial lights. And their high speaker rose to address the assembly with mandibles clicking in a rhythm that the universal translator interpreted as barely concealed contempt. The elder races have reached a unanimous decision, the high speaker announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber like the tolling of a funeral bell. And humanity will comply with our terms or face the consequences that all lesser species must face when they forget their place in the natural order of the galaxy. Daniel listened as the terms were laid out before him like a death sentence written in bureaucratic language. And each demand cut deeper than the last. Humanity would surrender the 3 colony worlds in the Kepler systems immediately. And all human settlers would be relocated to approved zones within 60 standard days. And Earth would pay reparations for the resources already extracted from worlds that the elder races now claimed as their ancestral territory. And humanity would reduce its fleet to no more than 20 vessels for defensive purposes only. And human expansion beyond current borders would require approval from the Council for the next 500 years. The Kreef delegate laughed when the terms were finished, a wet gurgling sound that made Daniel's skin crawl. And the amphibian creature's bulbous eyes fixed on the human ambassador with obvious amusement. "Look at him trembling," the Kreef said to his neighbors loud enough for everyone to hear. "The frightened newcomer realizes now what it means to challenge those who ruled the stars, while his ancestors were still crawling through mud and hitting each other with rocks." Laughter rippled through several delegations, and Daniel felt heat rise to his face. But he kept his expression neutral because showing anger would only make things worse. The Meldari ambassador, an ancient being composed of flowing golden energy contained within a humanoid force field, watched the proceedings with what might have been sadness or might have been indifference. And her kind had seen countless younger species humbled before the council over the millennia. "Ambassador Hartley," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, "do you understand the terms presented to your species? And do you have any response for the council before we proceed to enforcement protocols?" Daniel cleared his throat and spoke with a calm he did not feel. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, I respectfully request a recess of 6 hours to consult with Earth Command regarding these terms, as the gravity of this decision requires input from our governing bodies before I can provide an official response." The Vorten High Speaker's mandibles clicked rapidly in irritation. "You waste our time with delays," he snapped. "But we will grant your recess because we are merciful, and because it will change nothing. And because we want your leaders to understand fully the hopelessness of their position before they submit." Daniel bowed his head in what the aliens interpreted as submission and walked slowly from the chamber, feeling their eyes on his back like targeting lasers. And he did not allow himself to breathe normally until the massive doors closed behind him, his aide. A young woman named Samantha Price waited in the corridor with a secure communication tablet clutched to her chest, and her eyes were wide with fear. "Ambassador, what are we going to do?" she whispered. "They want us to give up everything, and our fleet is tiny compared to theirs. And if we refuse, they will destroy us." Daniel took the tablet from her hands and walked toward the human delegation quarters, speaking quietly as they moved through the station's winding corridors. "The signal was sent 12 hours ago, Samantha. The moment the Vorthen made their first threats in the preliminary session, Samantha frowned in confusion. "What signal?" "Sir." Daniel stopped walking and looked at his young aide with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Something between grim determination and dark satisfaction. "The signal that changes everything," he said. "The signal we hoped we would never have to send, but always knew we might need to. 12,000 light years away." Admiral Lauren Casey sat in the depths of strategic command beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by screens and sensors and the quiet hum of machinery that monitored threats from across human space. She was a woman in her late 50s with iron gray hair cut short and practical, and her eyes held the weight of decisions that had cost lives and saved millions more. And when the priority alert flashed across her personal terminal, she felt her stomach tighten, even though she had prepared for this moment for 3 decades. The message contained only 3 words. "Contingency Omega confirmed." Lauren closed her eyes for a moment and allowed herself to feel the full weight of what those words meant. And then she opened them again and became the admiral that humanity needed her to be. She picked up her comm unit and connected to her senior aide, Commander Patrick Sullivan, who answered immediately despite the late hour. "Commander, initiate Protocol Nightfall across all designated facilities," Lauren said, her voice steady as bedrock. "Authorization code Lauren 77 Omega Cascade." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Patrick spoke again, his voice carried a mixture of awe and determination. "Understood. Admiral, Protocol Nightfall is now active, and all facility commanders are being notified. Estimated full readiness in 14 hours. Lauren nodded even though he could not see her. "Make it 12. Patrick, our people are running out of time." She ended the call and made one more. This one to a number that existed in no official database and connected to a location that appeared unknown. Map. A gruff male voice answered. "Casey, is it time?" "Wake them up, Admiral Morrison," Lauren said. "Wake them all up, across human space, in hidden shipyards carved into asteroids and secret facilities, buried beneath the ice of frozen moons and manufacturing plants disguised as mining operations in the outer colonies." Lights began to flicker on in sections that had been dark for years. Men and women who had trained in secret for decades received messages on devices they had carried for so long they had almost forgotten their purpose. And they read those messages and felt their hearts begin to race. The galaxy thought it knew humanity, and the galaxy thought humans were the frightened newcomers who had stumbled into the stars with their tiny fleet and their naive hopes for friendship. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it had been. The 6 hours passed slowly for the alien delegates who waited in the council chamber, drinking their various beverages and exchanging jokes about human cowardice. And more than one of them wagered on whether the Earth ambassador would even have the courage to return, or whether he would simply flee the station in shame. The Kreeth delegate had already begun planning how he would divide the resources of the Kepler colonies among his corporate allies, and the Vorthen High Speaker was composing the announcement he would broadcast across the galaxy, declaring humanity's submission to Elder Race authority. None of them noticed the subtle change in the energy readings at the edge of the system, and none of them paid attention when a junior technician in the station's sensor bay frowned at her console and called her supervisor over to look at something strange. When the doors to the council chamber finally opened again, Daniel Hartley walked through them alone, and something fundamental had changed in the way he carried himself. His shoulders were straighter, and his stride was longer, and his eyes held a dangerous glint that made the Kreeth delegate stop laughing mid-joke. And when the human ambassador took his place at the podium, he looked out at the assembled aliens, not as a supplicant, but as something else entirely. "The recess has ended," the Moldari ambassador announced, "and the council recognizes Ambassador Hartley of Earth, who will now deliver humanity's response to our terms." Daniel nodded and took a deep breath before speaking. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. The United Earth government has reviewed your demands with great care, consulting with our military advisors and our elected representatives and our citizens across all human worlds. He paused, and the silence in the chamber grew thick with anticipation. We reject your terms entirely, Daniel said. Every single one of them, without exception or negotiation. For a moment, nobody moved. And then the chamber erupted into chaos as delegates shouted and gestured and demanded clarification. And the Vorthen High Speaker rose to his full impressive height with fury radiating from every segment of his chitinous body. You dare, he roared, his mandibles clicking so rapidly they created a buzzing sound that hurt human ears. You insignificant creatures dare to refuse the will of the elder races. Do you understand what you have done? Do you comprehend the destruction you have brought upon your species? Daniel remained perfectly still as the alien's rage washed over him like a wave breaking against a stone. I understand completely, he replied. I suspect it is you who does not yet comprehend the situation. The Kreeth delegate slammed his webbed hands on the table. Your species commands 47 combat vessels, he shouted. 47 ancient rust buckets that would last perhaps 30 minutes against a proper fleet. We have cataloged every ship humanity possesses. We know your strength down to the last shuttle and cargo hauler. You have nothing. Daniel smiled, and it was not a kind smile. And it was not a submissive smile. And it was the smile of someone who holds a secret that will change everything. You counted our ships, he said softly. That was your first mistake. You saw what we allowed you to see. You recorded what we wanted you to record, and you assumed that what you observed was the truth. The Muldari ambassador's energy form flickered suddenly, and her voice lost its musical quality as something that might have been alarm entered her tone. What do you mean? Ambassador, what are you saying? Daniel stepped out from behind the podium and walked toward the center of the chamber floor, a place where no human had ever dared to stand before. For 60 years, humanity has maintained a modest defensive fleet, he explained. 47 vessels old and outdated, barely capable of protecting our core worlds from pirates and asteroids. This is what we showed you. This is what your spies reported. This is what your analysts confirmed. He turned slowly to face each delegation in turn. But humanity learned something long ago. Something written in blood across our entire history. Something that our ancestors carved into their bones through 10,000 years of warfare and survival. Never show your enemy your true strength. Never reveal your full capabilities. Never let anyone know what you are truly capable of until the moment when you have no other choice. The Vorthen High Speaker's mandibles had stopped clicking, and an uneasy silence had fallen over the chamber as the aliens began to sense that something had gone terribly wrong with their carefully laid plans. You are bluffing, the Kreeth delegate said, but his voice had lost its confidence. You have nothing. You were just talking to delay the inevitable. At that moment, the doors to the chamber burst open and a Muldari technician rushed in. Her energy form pulsing with agitation. High Council, she shouted. Something is happening at the edge of the system. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures, hundreds of them, thousands of them. Jump points are opening everywhere. The Muldari ambassador rose from her seat and accessed the station's sensor network directly. And when she saw what was coming, her ancient form flickered with pure shock. That is impossible, she whispered. This cannot be real. Daniel's smile widened. Oh, it is very real, he said. Allow me to introduce you to the reason why humanity has seemed so peaceful and cooperative and weak for the past 6 decades. The main display screen at the front of the chamber activated automatically as the station system struggled to process the incoming data. And what appeared on that screen made every alien in the room fall completely silent. Ships were emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. Hundreds of them, then thousands, then more than anyone could count. Massive vessels of designs no alien had ever seen before, bristling with weapon systems that made the elder race's most advanced dreadnoughts look like children's toys. We call it the Shadow Fleet. Daniel continued. 4,200 warships constructed in secret over 6 decades, hidden in facilities scattered across human space, crewed by men and women who trained their entire lives for this moment, while the galaxy laughed at our tiny public navy. The Vorthan High Speaker sank back into his seat, his compound eyes fixed on the screen in disbelief. "How?" he managed to ask. "How did you hide this from us? We had spies in your government. We monitored your communications. We watched your shipyards." Daniel turned to face the insectoid directly. "You watched the shipyards we wanted you to watch. You intercepted the communications we wanted you to intercept. And your spies reported exactly what we allowed them to learn. Every human citizen paid a small tax they believed went to infrastructure and public services. But that money built what you see on that screen." The Kreeth delegate's face had turned a sickly pale color. "This changes nothing," he said desperately. "So you have ships, we still outnumber you. The combined fleets of the elder races total nearly 15,000 vessels." Daniel shook his head slowly. "Your combined fleets are scattered across 1,000 systems," he pointed out. "Ours are right here, right now, with targeting solutions already calculated on every vessel in this system. And more importantly," he paused and looked at each delegate with eyes that held no mercy, "we are not here to negotiate anymore. We came to this summit hoping for peace, genuinely and truly hoping that we could build something good with our galactic neighbors. But you chose to threaten our homes and our children and our future. So now we are here to make something very clear." His voice dropped to a cold whisper that somehow carried through the entire chamber. "Humanity did not come to the stars alone. And anyone who threatens us will learn exactly what that means." Commander Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the carrier vessel, Endeavor's light, and watched the stars burn as jump points tore open across the darkness of space, spilling forth the greatest armada that any living being had ever witnessed. He was a man of 45 years with hands that bore the calluses of hard work and eyes that had seen more combat simulations than most soldiers saw in a lifetime of actual warfare. And he had waited for this moment since he was recruited into the Shadow Fleet program at the age of 19. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency at their stations, calling out reports and confirmations in steady voices that betrayed no fear and no hesitation, because they had trained for this day every single day of their adult lives. Battle Group Alpha is in formation and reporting all systems operational. Lieutenant Commander Megan Torres announced from her tactical station, her dark hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun that she had worn the same way for 15 years. Battle Groups Beta through Epsilon are emerging now and assuming designated positions. Nathan nodded and felt a swell of pride at the precision of the operation. "Time to full fleet deployment?" he asked. 17 minutes for primary elements." Megan replied, "Auxiliary units will complete formation in 24 minutes. All dreadnoughts are charging primary weapon systems as a precautionary measure." Nathan turned to look at the main view screen and watched as ship after ship emerged from the glowing tiers in space, each vessel larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen from humanity. The carrier Endeavors. Light itself was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to devastate a small moon. But it was far from the largest ship in the fleet, and Nathan could see the massive dreadnoughts taking position at the formation's core like ancient predators awakening from a long sleep. Senior Chief Gregory Palmer, a veteran who had helped design half the weapon systems now being powered up across the fleet, stepped up beside his commander. Never thought I would actually see this day, Gregory said quietly. Spent 30 years building these ships and training crews and running drills. And part of me always hoped we would never have to use them. Nathan understood the feeling perfectly because he shared it. We gave them a chance, he said. Ambassador Hartley went to that summit with genuine hope for peace. He offered friendship and cooperation and a future where humanity and the elder races could build something together. And they spat in his face. Gregory nodded grimly. Then they made their choice. And now they get to live with the consequences. The communications officer, a young man named Kevin Brooks, who had graduated top of his class from the Shadow Fleet Academy, turned from his console. Commander, we are receiving a hail from the station. Multiple alien delegations are demanding to know our intentions, and several are making threats. Nathan almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. They surrounded our ambassador with overwhelming force and demanded our surrender. And now they are making threats because we showed up with a bigger stick. Patch me through to the station's council chamber on an open channel. Kevin's fingers danced across his console. Channel open. Sir. Nathan straightened his uniform and spoke clearly and calmly into the pickup. This is Commander Nathan Cole of the United Earth Shadow Fleet. I am addressing the Galactic Council currently in session on Nexus Prime. We are assuming defensive positions around this station and all vessels in the system. Any aggressive action against our ambassador or against Earth colonies will be met with overwhelming force. He paused to let the words sink in. We have achieved targeting solutions on every ship currently present. And our weapons are charged and ready. We do not wish to fire. We genuinely and truly do not want to shed blood today. But we will defend our people without hesitation if you force us to do so. The response came quickly, and it was the Vorthen High Speaker's voice. Though it had lost much of its earlier arrogance, you cannot threaten the elder races like this. The alien insisted, there will be consequences. We will summon our full fleets, and we will crush you for this insult. Nathan shook his head, even though the alien could not see him. Your full fleets would take weeks to assemble, he replied. And we would see them coming long before they arrived. And we would meet them not with 4,000 ships, but with 8,000 because the vessels you see here are merely our rapid response force. The main fleet is still at home. That was a bluff, or at least mostly a bluff. But Nathan delivered it with such confidence that even his own crew believed it for a moment. Furthermore, he continued, I suggest you consider what would happen to your undefended homeworlds while your fleets were busy trying to reach us. Humanity has proven today that we are very good at hiding things. Can you be certain that we do not have ships already positioned near your most important systems? Silence fell over the communication channel, and Nathan could almost hear the alien delegates reconsidering their life choices back in the council chamber. Daniel Hartley watched the faces of the 12 alien delegations and saw something he had never expected to see. Fear the Vorthen High Speaker's mandibles twitched nervously, and the Kreeth delegate had stopped speaking entirely and seemed to be trying to make himself invisible in his chair. And even the ancient Meldari ambassador appeared shaken by the sudden reversal of fortunes. You should all understand something, Daniel said into the silence. Humanity did not build this fleet because we wanted war. We built it because we knew what you were. We studied your history before we ever made contact. We learned how you treated every other young species that tried to join your community. He began to pace slowly before the council table. The Fenari were a peaceful people with beautiful art and philosophy who wanted nothing but friendship. And you conquered them and turned them into servants. The Keleth developed faster than light travel and reached out to the stars with hope in their hearts. And you crushed them so thoroughly that their entire civilization collapsed within a generation. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably because what the humans said was true. We saw what happened to those who came before us. Daniel continued, and we decided that we would not share their fate. So while we smiled and played the role of humble newcomers, We prepared for the day when you would reveal your true intentions. He stopped pacing and faced the council directly. That day has come. And here we are. And now you have a choice to make. You can try to fight us and lose everything. Or you can accept that humanity is not prey and never will be. And we can try to build something new together. Something based on mutual respect instead of threats and domination. The Meldari ambassador rose from her seat and glided forward until she stood before Daniel. Her ancient energy flickering with emotions that her kind rarely displayed. You could destroy us, she said quietly. Right now, with your fleet surrounding us, you could eliminate the leadership of every major power in the galaxy. Daniel met her gaze without flinching. Yes, he admitted. We could, and a lesser species might do exactly that. Might take revenge for every threat and every insult and every moment of fear. But that is not who we are. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, and we still hope for that. Even now, he extended his hand in a gesture of greeting that humans had used for thousands of years. We do not want to be your enemies, he said. We never did. We just refuse to be your victims. So what happens next is up to you. The Meldari ambassador looked at his hand for a long moment, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Admiral Lauren Casey arrived at Nexus Prime aboard the dreadnought Resolute Dawn. And when her flagship emerged from hyperspace, even the battle-hardened crews of the Shadow Fleet paused to watch in awe. The Resolute Dawn was the largest vessel humanity had ever constructed, stretching nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern and carrying enough firepower to crack a continent. And its arrival signaled to everyone present that Earth was treating this situation with the utmost seriousness. Lauren stood on the command deck surrounded by officers who had served with her for decades. Men and women who had dedicated their lives to a secret that most of humanity never knew existed. And she felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Signal from Commander Cole on Endeavor's Light. Her communications officer reported. He confirms that the alien fleet is holding position and showing no signs of aggressive action. Lauren nodded and turned to her senior tactical officer, Captain Ryan Martinez, a man who had written the book on large-scale fleet engagement strategies. What is your assessment? Ryan. She asked. Ryan studied the tactical display with experienced eyes. The alien vessels could try to make a break for the jump points, he said. But our interdiction fields are already active, and they would never make it. They could try a concentrated assault on our formation, but our defensive coverage is too complete. They are trapped, and they know it. Lauren allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Then it is time for me to go have a conversation with the council. Prepare a shuttle. Ryan raised an eyebrow in concern. Admiral, with respect, walking into that council chamber puts you at risk. We could simply dictate terms from here. Lauren shook her head. Dictating terms from a distance is what conquerors do, she said. We are not conquerors. We need to show them that we are willing to take the same risks we ask of our ambassador. We need to show them that humans lead from the front. 30 minutes later, Lauren Casey materialized in the council chamber aboard Nexus Prime. The transporter technology, another secret that humanity had kept hidden from galactic scrutiny. Daniel Hartley stepped forward to greet her with obvious relief on his face. Admiral Casey. Thank you for coming. Lauren clasped his shoulder briefly and then turned to face the assembled delegates, most of whom were staring at her uniform and the medals that adorned it with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. I am Admiral Lauren Casey, Commander of the United Earth Shadow Fleet, she announced. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but I felt it was important that we speak face to face. The Kreeth delegate found his voice again. Though it trembled slightly, you deceived us, he accused. All these decades of playing the humble newcomers, pretending to be weak, making us believe you were harmless. It was all lies. Lauren's expression remained neutral as she faced the amphibian creature. We deceived no one, she replied calmly. You saw what you wished to see. You looked at humanity and saw prey, because that is what you wanted to see. You never asked yourselves why a species that had survived everything our own world threw at us would ever reveal our true capabilities to potential enemies. She activated a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber, showing images from human history. This is our past, she said. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years and forced our ancestors to adapt or die. Plagues that killed half our population, and still we survived. Wars that threatened to destroy everything we had built, and still we rose from the ashes. The images shifted to show nuclear explosions and devastated cities. We came within minutes of wiping ourselves out. Lauren continued. Our own weapons nearly ended our story before it truly began. But we pulled back from the edge, and we learned from our mistakes, and we vowed that we would never again be caught unprepared. The Moldari ambassador watched the images with something approaching. Wonder, you are saying that your own violent history taught you to prepare for us, she observed. Lauren nodded. We knew what intelligent beings are capable of because we knew ourselves. We knew that the universe would not simply welcome us with open arms. We hoped for the best and prepared for the worst. And when we encountered the elder races, we immediately recognized the pattern. She deactivated the holographic display. You are stronger than us in many ways, she acknowledged. Your civilizations are older, and your technologies are more refined in certain areas. But you forgot something that we never forgot. You forgot what it means to fight for survival. You became comfortable and complacent. And you assumed that your strength would always be enough. The Vorthen High Speaker stirred in his seat, his mandibles clicking slowly. And yet you sought peace, he said, his voice much quieter than before. If you knew we would threaten you eventually, why not strike first? Why build your fleet and wait for us to make the first move? Daniel stepped forward to answer that question. Because we hoped we were wrong about you, he said simply. We hoped that maybe this time things would be different. We hoped that the elder races would see humanity as potential partners instead of potential victims. Lauren picked up where he left off. We genuinely wanted peace, she confirmed. Every citizen who paid that secret tax, every soldier who trained in hidden facilities, every engineer who built those ships in asteroid bases, all of them hoped that this day would never come. We built our fleet praying that we would never have to use it. She looked at each delegation in turn with eyes that held both steel and sadness. You forced our hand, she said. You threatened our children and our homes and our future. You left us no choice but to reveal what we had hidden. And now here we are. Captain Ryan Martinez's voice came through Lauren's earpiece in an urgent tone. Admiral, we are detecting power fluctuations in several alien vessels. It looks like weapon systems are being activated. Lauren held up her hand to pause the conversation and spoke aloud so the delegates could hear. I am being informed that some of your ships are powering weapons, she said. I strongly advise against that course of action. The Kreeth delegate's eyes widened in panic. It is not us, he insisted. Some of the younger captains may be acting independently. Please give us time to contact them. Lauren considered the request for exactly 3 seconds. You have 60 seconds to order them to stand down, she said. After that, my captains have orders to eliminate any vessel that poses a threat. And I assure you, they will not miss. The next minute was the longest of everyone's lives as frantic communications flew between the council chamber and the alien vessels outside. And slowly, one by one, the weapons signatures faded as the rogue captains were brought back under control when it was over. The Moldari ambassador let out a sound that might have been a sigh. This is madness, she said. We are moments away from a war that would destroy us all. And for what? For pride, for resources. for the right to call ourselves masters of beings who clearly refuse to be mastered. She turned to face her fellow delegates. I move that we immediately enter negotiations with humanity on new terms, she announced. Terms based on equality and mutual respect, not domination and submission. The chamber fell silent as the weight of her words sank in, and Lauren Casey allowed herself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, something good might come from this day after all. 3 days of negotiations followed the Meldari ambassador's proposal. 3 days of tense discussions and careful diplomacy, and moments when everything nearly fell apart. But humanity had something it had never possessed before in galactic affairs. Leveraged Daniel Hartley led the human delegation through every session with patience and determination, refusing to give in to anger even when certain delegates tried to provoke him, and refusing to gloat even when the power had shifted so dramatically in humanity's favor. Admiral Lauren Casey remained on station with the Shadow Fleet, a constant reminder that humanity's new position was backed by more than just words. And her presence helped keep the more aggressive alien factions in line on the 4th day. The final treaties were ready for signing, and the council chamber that had once witnessed humanity's humiliation now hosted a ceremony that would reshape galactic politics forever. The terms were remarkable in their simplicity and their fairness. Humanity S colonies would remain untouched, and no reparations would be paid. And human expansion would no longer require council approval as long as it did not encroach on established territories. And trade agreements were established on terms of genuine equality with tariffs and restrictions that applied to all parties. Equally, most importantly, a new seat was added to the Galactic Council itself, a permanent seat for humanity, with full voting rights and veto power on matters affecting human interests. The Vorthan High Speaker approached Daniel after the signing ceremony, his mandibles clicking in what the ambassador had learned to recognize as a sign of nervousness. I must ask you something, the alien said. Something that has troubled me since your fleet appeared. Daniel nodded for him to continue. You had the power to destroy us, the High Speaker said. Your weapons were charged. Your targeting solutions were complete. You could have eliminated every leader of every major power in the galaxy in a single strike. So why did you hold back? Why show restraint when we had shown you none? Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. Because we want neighbors, not subjects, he said. We want partners in exploring this universe, not corpses floating in the void. We have seen enough death in our history, enough destruction and hatred and war, and we came to the stars hoping to leave that behind. He placed his hand on the insectoid's armored shoulder in a gesture of respect. You asked earlier why we built our fleet and waited for you to make the first move instead of striking when we had the advantage. Daniel continued. The answer is that we wanted to give you a chance to prove us wrong. We wanted you to have the opportunity to choose peace before we showed you our strength. The High Speaker's compound eyes flickered with something that might have been shame, and we failed that test. He acknowledged. Yes, Daniel agreed. But that does not mean you cannot pass the next one. Humanity believes in second chances. It is how we survived our own mistakes. Across the station, Admiral Lauren Casey stood on an observation deck watching the alien vessels begin to depart peacefully, their weapons cold and their crews shaken but alive. And Commander Nathan Cole joined her after handing off command of the Endeavor's light to his executive officer. Think they learned their lesson? Nathan asked, echoing a question that had been on many minds. Lauren turned to face him with tired eyes that still held a spark of hope. They learned that humanity is not to be underestimated, she said. Whether they learned that we genuinely want peace remains to be seen. But for now, they understand one truth that will serve us well for generations. What truth is that? Lauren smiled. The same dangerous smile that Daniel had worn in the council chamber when he refused the aliens' demands. that we never came alone, she said. And we never will. Nathan nodded and turned back to watch the stars. What happens to the Shadow Fleet now? He wondered aloud. The secret is out. Everyone knows what we have. Do we just become a regular navy? Lauren shook her head. The Shadow Fleet will remain exactly what it has always been. Humanity's insurance policy. We showed them 4,000 ships today, but they do not need to know how many we are building right now, or where our next generation of facilities are hidden, or what new technologies we are developing in laboratories they will never find. She placed her hand on the cold, transparent surface that separated them from the void. We gave them a glimpse of our strength, she said. Just enough to make them reconsider their approach. But the full picture will remain our secret, as it should be. Back on Earth, news of the confrontation at Nexus Prime spread across every continent and colony. And humanity celebrated not a victory in war, but something far more precious. Proof that they were no longer alone and afraid in the universe, in schools and homes and workplaces. People talked about what the Shadow Fleet meant for their future. And parents explained to their children that the small tax they paid every year had built something magnificent. Something that would protect them and their grandchildren and their grandchildren's grandchildren, Admiral Morrison. The gruff old soldier who had helped Lauren Casey build the Shadow Fleet from its earliest days, gave a single interview before returning to the Shadows where he preferred to operate. People ask me if I'm proud of what we built, he said. And the answer is complicated. I am proud that we were ready when the moment came. I am proud that our ships and crews performed exactly as we designed them to perform. But I am most proud of what we chose not to do. He paused and looked directly into the camera. We could have started a war that would have killed billions. He continued. We could have taken revenge for every slight and threat and moment of fear. We could have become exactly the kind of monsters that we built our fleet to defend against, but we chose differently. And that choice is what makes us human. 6 months after the confrontation at Nexus Prime, Daniel Hartley returned to the council chamber as Earth's permanent representative, taking his seat among the elder races as an equal for the first time in galactic history. The Maldari ambassador greeted him warmly, her energy form pulsing with colors that her kind used to express friendship. I have studied your species extensively since our last meeting, she said, and I believe I am beginning to understand why you are so different from the others who came before you. Daniel raised an eyebrow curiously. And what have you concluded? The ancient, being considered her words carefully. Other young species saw the stars and dreamed of conquest or wealth, or escape from their problems, she said. But humans looked up at the night sky and saw something else. You saw a challenge, an obstacle to overcome, a test to pass. And you prepared for it the way you have prepared for every challenge in your history. She reached out and touched his hand with her energy form, a gesture of deep respect among her kind. You are survivors, she said. Not because you are the strongest or the most advanced, but because you refuse to give up. You refuse to accept defeat. You refuse to stop fighting even when all hope seems lost. Daniel smiled and squeezed her hand gently. We learned long ago that the universe does not care about our hopes or fears, he said. It does not reward the weak or punish the strong. It simply is. And the only way to thrive in such a universe is to be ready for whatever it throws at you. He turned to look out the window at the stars that humanity had once only dreamed of reaching. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, he said. And we found something more complicated than friendship. We found a galaxy that tests every species that enters it. And we passed that test because we never forgot what we learned on our journey from caves to starships. The Moldari tilted her head curiously. And what lesson is that? Daniel's smile widened as he thought of the Shadow Fleet still watching over human space, still hidden in the darkness between stars, still waiting to defend everything humanity had built. Never show your enemy everything you have. he said, "and never, ever come alone."